Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Moed Katan. We are up to Perek Gimel Mishnah Hey. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'ilu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Aranbayev, and Eliyahu ben Burchai Israelov, Menuchatam beGan Eden, Amen, Le'avdi ben Chaim L'Chaim, V'Refuah Shenemav, Daniel Shno ben Rosa, B'toch Shah Chulei Israel. The next 5 Mishnayot deal with the laws of Avilut, mourning, as they apply during a festival. Some of the general laws of mourning are also discussed. The following is an introduction brought down in the article elucidated to this Mishnah to some of the basic terms and concepts that will be mentioned over the next several Mishnayot. A person is obligated to mourn the death of his close relative. Father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, or spouse is what is defined as a close relative. Mourning is divided into 2 periods for most relatives and 3 for parents. Different prohibitions apply during each period as follows. As soon as the deceased has been buried, the mourner enters a 7-day period of Shiva, which means 7, which is the most intense period of mourning. From the end of Shiva until the 30th day after the burial, the mourner is in the period of Shloshim, which means 30. During that time, a lesser level of mourning applies. After Shloshim, the person is no longer subject to any mourning restrictions, unless he is mourning a parent, in which case certain mourning restrictions continue to apply until the end of 12 months. During Shiva, the mourner may not take a haircut, wash his clothes, or wear freshly laundered clothing, bathe, smear himself with oil, engage in marital relations, wear shoes, perform work, learn Torah, or greet others. After Shiva, none of these restrictions apply except for taking a haircut, as well as certain restrictions that apply to wearing freshly laundered clothing. A mourner during Shloshim may not, except under certain circumstances, get married or attend celebrations. He also may not take a long trip for business purposes. In the case of one who is mourning his father or mother, a less strict form of these restrictions applies for a longer time, usually until the end of 12 months. According to basic halacha, a mourner is allowed to bathe during Shloshim. However, the Rama and the Shach in Yoredea, chapter 381, halacha 1, bring down an ancient custom to refrain from bathing in hot water throughout the Shloshim. Again, for practical halacha, one must always consult with his local Orthodox rabbi. Aside from the laws of mourning, a mourner is required to perform kriyah, which is rending of his garment. The 7 close relatives must perform kriyah either at the time of the deceased's death or just before the burial. For a parent, one must tear his garment until his chest is revealed, and the tear may never be fully resewn. For other relatives, one tears only a tefach, a handbreadth, and may sew it up completely after the Shloshim is over. Tearing must be done while standing. Now, these laws are discussed at length in Yoredea, chapter 340 till 403. The first Mishnah of this section discusses what happens when a festival falls during the Shiva or Shloshim. Are these periods completed after the festival, or does the festival count toward their completion? Hakoveret meto shlosha yemim kodem laregel. The Mishnah begins, if someone buries his dead relative 3 or more days before a festival. Now, the Mishnah mentions the time of burial, not of death, because like we stated, the mourning period of Shiva begins not after death, but after burial. Now, the term regel, literally foot, refers specifically to Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, when there is a mitzvah to visit the temple. A festival cancels the Shiva only if a significant part of the Shiva has already been observed. The first 3 days of the Shiva are the most intense and are therefore considered its main part. For this reason, a festival cancels the Shiva only once the first 3 days have been observed. If the Shiva began fewer than 3 days before the festival, it must be completed afterward. This is the view of our Mishnah. The Halakha follows a different view found in the Gemara on page 20a, that a festival cancels the Shiva even if the Shiva began shortly before the festival. So again, if someone buries his dead relative 3 or more days before a festival, batla hemenu gzerat Shiva, the law of Shiva is cancelled for him, and he does not have to observe the rest of the Shiva after the festival. The Shloshim, however, is not cancelled. Shimona If the burial took place 8 or more days before the festival, so the Shiva ended and the Shloshim began before the festival arrived, Batla Imenu Gzerat Shloshim, then the law of Shloshim is cancelled for him, and he does not have to observe the rest of the Shloshim after the festival. A festival can cancel Shloshim only if the Shloshim had begun before the festival. If the Shiva began 8 days before the festival, the day before the festival is the first day of the Shloshim. In that case, since the Shloshim began before the festival can cancel. Now the halacha, however, follows the view that even if the Shiva began only 7 days before the festival, the Shloshim is cancelled. The reason for this is that the 7 days consider both the last day of the Shiva as well as the first day of the Shloshim, as Shulchan Aruch writes in Yoredea, chapter 399, halakha 3. Now it is an accepted rule that Shabbat does not cancel a Shiva, and the Mishnah explains why it is that festivals cancel Shiva and Shloshim while Shabbat does not. Mipnei she'amru, it is because the earlier sages said, Shabbat ola ve'nah mafseket, Shabbat counts as one of the days of a Shiva and does not cut it short. Rather, Shiva continues after Shabbat. Regalim mafsikin ve'enan olim. The festivals, however, cut the Shiva short, like we said, and they do not count toward the Shiva. Meaning, when the festival does not cut the Shiva short, 7 days must be observed apart from the days of the festival. When the Mishnah says the festival cuts the Shiva short, it refers to a case where the dead was buried 3 or more days before the festival, and so the Shiva is cancelled, as the Mishnah itself stated earlier. However, when it says and they do not count toward the Shiva, the case is that the burial took place fewer than 3 days before the festival, where the Shiva is not cancelled. Nonetheless, the days of the festivals themselves do not count towards the 7 days of Shiva. The rest of the 7 days of the Shiva must be observed after the festival ends. We can now understand why Shabbat is different from a festival in regard to canceling a Shiva. Since Shabbat counts towards the Shiva, it does not cancel it. A festival is the opposite. It does not count towards the Shiva, and to the contrary, it cancels it. Now the Mishnah cites the statement of the earlier sages only to show that Shabbat and festivals differ from each other with regard to counting toward the Shiva. Based on this difference, it can be understood why they are different with regard to canceling the Shiva. The reason Shabbat counts towards the Shiva and a festival does not count is that on Shabbat, although mourning is not observed publicly, those laws of mourning that are not publicly displayed must be kept. Since some level of mourning is being observed, Shabbat counts towards the Shiva. On a festival, however, no mourning whatsoever is kept, so it does not count as part of the Shiva. This is how the Rav explains the Mishnah, and that is then of Mishnah Hey. In the previous Mishnah, again, we learned about the impact of Shabbat and the 3 festivals on the mourning periods of Shiva and Shoshim. This Mishnah, Mishnah Vav, discusses how these laws apply to Shavuot in our times, as well as to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Rabbi Eliezer says, Mishecharav Bet HaMikdash Atzeret Kashabbat. Since the destruction of the temple, Shavuot is treated with regard to mourning like Shabbat, and it counts as part of Shiva and does not cancel it. Since Shavuot is now only 1 day long, it is not treated like the other festivals. Although the festival of Shavuot was celebrated for only 1 day even during temple times, the special offerings brought in each of the 3 pilgrimage festivals, Shalosh Regalim, including Shavuot, could be brought either on Shavuot itself or during the next 6 days. Because some aspect of Shavuot extended for 7 days, it was treated during temple times like a 7-day festival with regard to canceling mourning. Once the temple was destroyed and offerings were no longer brought, Shavuot is simply a 1-day festival. It therefore has the same status as Shabbat, which does not cancel Shiva and even counts toward it. According to Rabbi Eliezer, the reason festivals do not count toward the Shiva is that they are 7 days long. Since mourning is not observed on the festivals, if 7-day festivals were to count towards Shiva, an entire Shiva could pass without its laws being observed. Therefore, it makes no sense to count a 7-day festival towards the days of the Shiva. Since a 7-day festival has interrupted the Shiva without counting toward it, the Shiva is simply cancelled. Rabban Gamliel says, Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim kiregalim. Even Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and certainly Shavuot, the commentaries add, are treated in this regard like the pilgrimage festivals, that they cancel these periods of mourning and do not count towards them. Rabban Gamliel holds that the reason for the difference between Shabbat and festivals is not their length, but rather the fact that on festivals no laws of mourning are observed, whereas on Shabbat, those laws of mourning that are not publicly displayed must be kept. Since no laws of mourning are kept on a festival, it is not counted as part of the Shiva. Shabbat, on the other hand, counts towards the Shiva, since mourning is kept in private. Shabbat, therefore, does not interrupt the Shiva. And in addition, Rabban Gamliel considers even Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur like festivals in this regard, since the Torah in Seder Vayikra, chapter 23, verse 4, groups together all the festivals, including Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, in the same verse. Now, the reason that no laws of mourning are kept on a festival while some are kept on Shabbat is that the Torah calls a festival a time of joy, simcha, whereas Shabbat is referred to only as a time of delight, oneg, but not of joy. The sages, however, say, lo chedivrei zeh v'lo chedivrei zeh. The sages, however, rule not like either of the two. Ela atzeret kiregalim. Rather, they say that Shavuot, which is a time of joy, is treated like the other festivals, even in our times. Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim ka-Shabbat. And Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which are not times of joy, are treated like Shabbat. The sages agree with Rabban Gamliel that the difference between Shabbat and the festivals is that the festivals are times of joy, and no laws of mourning are observed on them, while on Shabbat some restrictions of mourning are kept. However, the sages do differentiate between Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Shavuot. Shavuot is one of the 3 pilgrimage festivals, and therefore is treated the same as the other pilgrimage festivals, and therefore cancels Shiva even after the destruction of the temple, although it lasts only 1 day. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, however, are not part of the 3 pilgrimage festivals, and therefore do not have the status of these festivals. They are therefore treated like Shabbat. And the Rav does tell us, Umaskana de milta linan psak halacha. The Rav tells us his opinion of the halacha, da'atzeret bizman zikr regalim, that Shavuot nowadays is treated like the other pilgrimage festivals. The Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim regalim and Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur are also treated like the other pilgrimage festivals. And that is going to be today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.